special presentation from Manas. Now, what we've been talking about so often is administration features. Very often I'll have a webinar and it could be on a different topic, and questions will come up about administration. So, what we want to do today is just enable you to ask those questions live. I also will let Manas start by telling us a little bit about himself. Manas is from our PowerApps team, and his role is specifically around administration. So, Manas, if you don't mind, I'd love if you tell us a little bit about how you came on the team and what draws you to this particular area in PowerApps.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Manas Maheshwari, Program Manager with PowerApps Admin Team and Dynamics Admin Team. I joined PowerApps about 2.5, 3 years back and was pretty excited about the admin functionality. So PowerApps was a new team by then, new product being offered to you guys. And admin was a functionality which was coming out as one of the top asks. And we started the admin center, started rolling out the functionalities, and gradually, there's a lot of functionalities now available in admin and a lot more coming as well. So yes, super excited to be here talking about those features which we rolled out. How did it enable multiple of our customers and enterprises to start using the PowerApps in their organization?
Yeah, so this is exciting. Just give me a final okay, guys, that you can hear me clearly in the chat. I'm watching the chat on this screen here so that you can ask questions while Manas is presenting as well. Let me know if you hear me right now. And if you hear an echo, let me know. It's going to give you 30 seconds just to confirm all is good. Yep, all good. Thank you, Tony. Okay, Manas, thank you for that little bit of an introduction. We'll ask you questions during the session.
Great.
If it's in regards to what you're talking about, I'll interrupt. Otherwise, I'll save it to the end. But we'll try and make sure all questions are answered. If for some reason you post a question that we miss, don't worry. I'll be reviewing the questions after, and we'll post answers in the community for you. So Manas, I'd love to have you kind of share a screen and kind of give us a kind of a quick look at what the administration experience is today first.
Let me know if you're able to see the screen.
Okay, we're switching the screen share.
Great. Still not showing up. Okay, awesome. So this is the view of the PowerApps Admin Center. A similar view exists for even Flow Admin Center, and both are effectively the similar admin centers. Now, if you see over here on the left navigation, you have environments, you have data policies, and data integration is under preview. There are certain, if you're a tenant admin or Office 365 Global admin, you get a bunch of additional functionalities as well. For example, to see what are the user licenses, like who all are using PowerApps and Flow in your organization, what kind of quotas have been used from Flow, etc. So it is a single portal, how any other services, for example, Office 365 Admin Center is also another one. Like I'm so sure, like Azure also has similar one. For PowerApps, this is the Admin Center. Now, if we see the environment, which is the core part of this Admin Center, or even using PowerApps, the key thing is that everything works in context of an environment. If you're creating apps, they are created in context of an environment. If you're creating a flow, it gets created in context of an environment. You can create multiple environments in your organization. Multiple users can create multiple environments in the organization, and they all can start developing applications in it and start sharing it out with rest of the users in the company, team, larger organization, etc. So what we're going to do today is let's start with very simple functionalities and give a quick tour for the Admin Center. So here's the list of environments which exist today in the organization. I'm logged in as the tenant admin or Office 365 Global admin. Hence, I get to see all the environments in the organization. If you are not a tenant admin or Office 365 Global admin, then you get to see the environments which are where you are the admin. You would have created those environments or somebody else in your organization would have created them and added you as the environment admin. Now,
So, I'm sorry, quick question,
yeah,
Manas. So what you're saying is when I look at this list of environments, either I would have to own it or I would have to be the tenant admin?
yes, so you need to be an admin to start administrating these environments.
Okay,
And you'll only get to see them if you are an admin in Admin Center. Like, so basically you need to be an
Okay.
environment admin to see those environments in the Admin Center.
okay, but I don't need to be a tenant admin.
So here's the key. A tenant admin is an admin for all the environments in the entire company.
Irrelevant to what people gave them as rights.
Yes.
Okay.
They work in the God mode access for that matter,
Okay,
where they get the complete, environment admins for all the environments in the organization.
okay, and you're talking
Immaterial-
about a global admin, right?
Yes, Office
Okay.
365 Global Admin
Okay.
or Azure Active Directory tenant admin.
Perfect, thank you for that clarification.
Right. And now we'll quickly see and create a new environment. So here's the modal dialog where you can quickly go, write down the name, say, we want to create a production environment for demo purposes. And you can choose a region where you want to create the environment. There are multiple regions where you can create the environment, but what most important thing to note is there is something called default region for you. So this is the same region where your Azure Active Directory tenant must be created, must have been created with high likelihood. If not, then we default it to some closest proximity for your location, etc. So, for example, if you would have created a tenant in, say, South America, we don't have South America right now listed down over here, but we'll default it to a closer location to you. This tenant which I'm using is created in the United States, hence you see United States over here. And we continue to increase the number of regions and support more and more regions which are closer to your place, your location, your users, so that when you create apps and flows in them, then there's no performance hit. We make sure that we are honoring all your compliance requirements in that region, whatever is required by your local authorities, government, etc.
I like that. So you get three things in one here. One, by choosing the right region, we're actually improving our users' ability to view the data and see the data faster,
Yes.
right? Because it's closer
Yes.
to them. Two, we're covering all the compliance for that region.
Right.
Anybody interested in seeing compliance by region for PowerApps can go to the Microsoft Trust Center, and it'll actually give you our compliance for every single country that we are serving.
Yes.
And then thirdly, it gives us a way to control the data access for that environment, right?
Absolutely. So say, for example, European nations, some of them might require for the data to be completely available in Europe. How do they make sure? Just create a region in Europe. All your data sources, whichever you create with PowerApps and Flow, will be hosted in Europe.
So I think the best practice there, if you would agree, Manus, is that if I'm going to have an app in that I'm going to use in Europe, I should make sure the data for that app is in the same environment or the same region.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
we'll come to the data section as well,
Okay.
because data can be hosted at wherever you want.
Okay.
If you are creating the data in, say, Common Data Service for Apps, which is the PowerApps platform and database
Yeah.
offering, then we'll make sure that it gets created in Europe.
Okay.
Otherwise, for creating an app where you're trying to connect to any other data source, which you can do using a simple connector or custom API,
Yeah.
then it's entirely your wish where you want to connect to.
Okay.
We leave it up to your judgment, but of course, if you
There
want,
is a risk of latency there.
there might be risk of latency, etc. If you're not hosting them in the location where your
Gotcha.
environment is or where the rest of the users are.
Makes total sense. Thank you, Manus.
Okay, so let's create in the default region, and there are now the environment type. So this is something which is new comparatively. Earlier, we didn't have the notion of environment type. Now we're introducing the environment type as trial and production. So what trial type of environment is, hey, you want to try out new functionalities and probably create certain apps, try out new stuff, and probably you might not have access or privileges in the other environment. You can simply go over there, create a quick trial environment, get started with it, and explore the stuff. The only challenge is there's the environment will expire after 30 or so days. And then we'll have a story coming up where you can convert this into production type and let it be there for a longer period. It's currently not available. That's in our backlog at this moment.
Okay.
For the production environment, they will be there for a good long time as far as your license and other requirements are met and you have the current quota, then of course you can continue with the production environments.
Okay, great.
It's also important, and while we might touch base on some of the licensing topics later on, that you need to have the paid plan to create the production environment. For the trial ones, you can either create it if you have a trial or a viral plan, or you can create it with a paid plan of PowerApps Plan 2. So if you go ahead and sign up for the PowerApps Plan 2 trial, today you can create the trial environment with it. For the production, you need to have the paid plan of PowerApps Plan 2.
And when you buy the production plan, do you get to kind of promote your trial apps? Like the apps that you made in trial, can you promote them for production or can you share them once you have that P2 plan?
You can definitely go ahead and share them in that environment. It's just that the life of that environment and the life of the apps will be limited. So basically, when you start sharing it with wider audience, you want to make sure that you do it in the production environment and not in the trial environment.
Okay, because it has some limitation as to how long the data is retained.
Yes.
Okay.
So you might have access only for
a
certain number of days, and then the data will be retained for some time as only read-only access, etc. But
gotcha.
The key concern is that when you're sharing it out, people might be pouring in data into it, which might be for production use, your business criticality, etc. You want to make sure that you don't lose out on that data. So for sure, you should, if there's something which is critical for your business, if something which is critical for your team, and you don't want to lose that data or application, then make sure that you do it in production.
Okay.
Trial will have a limit, any other trial has, right?
Yes, no, totally understood. But now I can plan that way. I know that I'm building my trial apps, but I'm not building my production apps.
Right.
Okay.
And trial is, of course, very useful for the folks who might not have the paid plan, how to get started with it, etc. They can learn it and then go ahead and probably decide on, hey, I should probably buy a paid plan to create a production environment. Till then, of course, they can go ahead and try it with the trial.
Well, I love that we can do the trial because you want to catch that value, kind of understand what is this value that I've decided not to have. And then you can make a real decision, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's a rich set of data and feature that are included in that P2 plan that we'd love to give you a chance to try it out, even if you choose not to keep it.
Yes.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Let's go ahead and create the trial one for today and say if I go ahead and create an environment. This might take a few quick seconds to complete the environment creation. It will prompt us, hey, you want to create a database, etc. Now it's important over here. There are a few caveats which I would like to mention that when you create the database, you are creating, and we'll skip it for now and come back to it soon. So when you're creating a database, then you're creating it with Common Data Services for apps. It's hosted in the same region as your the environment is. So let's go and click on the environment which we created over here. Even if you didn't create the database earlier in the first step, it's okay. There is an option to create the database later on. But before we go ahead and click on that, I would like to showcase some of the stuff over here to give a little bit more clarity with the latest release of Common Data Service for apps, which we have launched.
I'm really excited about that because I haven't even seen some of these new features.
Right.
So thank you.
So this is an environment right now which does not have a database. And you can see there is a security where you have two roles, which is environment admin, environment maker. Environment admin is the role which we were just talking about in the starting of our discussion, where this is the person who has control of the complete environment, and the control is that not just at the operating at certain settings of the environment, they have the visibility of who all are creating apps. So this is a new environment, we haven't created any apps, but literally all the apps are being listed down over here, and all the flows which have been created, who all have created those apps and flows, and most importantly, whom all it is shared with. So that's the most important thing. So as an IT admin, I want to have the complete view of who all have created the apps in my environment and who all is it being shared with.
Okay, so this is what I consider to
Right.
be the first pillar of administration.
Yeah,
Being
yeah.
aware of who's using the features.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So let me just go and see if there's another environment. Oops. Right. Um, okay. So while this is coming up, apps and flows, let's go back to our production environment, right? Now, the key feature which have been asked is, hey, the person who was creating those apps is probably gone for a vacation. Who is the app owner who had the ability and permissions to share the app? Now, what do I do? There are new users who want to start using the apps. If you go to the resources tab and see the apps, of course, you can go ahead and start sharing them. As an admin, you have the liberty to do that. One additional stuff which is in our backlog right now is if the owner has left the organization, for example, the app owner, how do you update the app owner? So that's something which we are currently working into surface the UI, but it's of course available if you raise a support ticket or you can use the partial script for that. Some of the stuff which will be available in the blog post soon about the recommendations around it.
Okay, great. That's good to know. But one point that you made, I didn't know. So the environment admin can share apps even if he has not been shared the app by the app maker?
Absolutely. So the environment admin can, of course, go ahead and share the app to themselves by using that UI in the admin center, but of course they can go and share it with anyone in the organization they decide. They can as well remove the permissions for it.
Wow. Okay, great.
So that completely gives the the control to the admin of what all is being used and being created in the organization.
Okay. A couple of questions that came through here, Manas. So when you think about the admin's ability to share apps that have been made, can he prevent or limit users from creating apps in the default environment?
That's a very interesting one. So let's take a step back on that. And that's an important point which I definitely wanted to cover.
Okay.
So what are the various types of environment we have today? So one is, the first two are the production and the trial one, which we just created in the UI, right? You saw that. Those are created by the admins themselves. Now there's one called default, and the other one is called individual. So let's talk about the default first. What is a default environment? Why is it so different than the production, the trial?
That's a good question.
Default environment is something which the system creates, which PowerApps service or flow service creates behind the scenes the moment your tenant, even a single user, starts signing up for PowerApps and flow. Why do we do that? Because everything needs to work in a context of an environment. So default environment acts as that kind of a default space where anyone who is coming either using SharePoint and Office or using PowerApps and Flow, their individual portals or UI, it is that space or the environment where they land and then start using it.
Okay, because if we didn't have a default environment,
right,
we wouldn't be able to do anything from the start.
Absolutely.
So the default environment is kind of like that way of getting us, you can go ahead, get started on what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not held up until somebody makes an environment.
Right.
Okay.
And revisiting the topic that, you need to have certain plan or license, whether it's a trial, you need to have certain, to even create an environment brings a challenge that the new user who is coming, how do we land them? Where do they start operating, etc. So see, I came to the web.powerapps.com, PowerApps portal over here. And if you see the environment screen over here, it is where CDS, so this is the default one environment, which is being tagged as default, is being created for me.
I see that. Yeah.
And this is where I land and I can start creating those apps, etc.
Yeah.
Now, other environments where I might have some certain privileges, for example, production environment, etc., is also listed down over there.
So can you change your default environment? I think this is one thing they were asking, like, could I create my own default environment and then make it switch to that one as a default?
So And not many customers do that, but yes, we do have some way behind the scenes. If you create a support ticket, we can do that. Although we are not encouraging people to do that a lot. But if you have a real need, because you know what, all of a sudden the users will shift the context, and all of a sudden the users will now move to another environment, and they might not be able to recognize that and think, hey, where are my apps gone? Where are my flow gone? It might create a confusion for them. So just keep that in mind.
So that question came from Mohammed.
Yeah.
So he mentioned that when he started with Power Apps, he created a fault environment in Asia, but he's in Iraq, Middle East. So he's wondering, should I have chosen Europe, or can we change it? Like, so his environment that he created in Asia, he's second guessing whether that is the best place for his data.
So the question is, the reason why the default environment for Mohammed is created in Asia is because the Azure Active Directory tenant with high likelihood is in Asia. So we choose the same location, create the default environment, because the default environment is the most used environment typically in the organization. We want to make sure that we maintain a good performance for your users, etc. So if all of your users in Europe, if there is a way for us to have an offline discussion with Mohammed, would love to have that.
Yeah, we can arrange
why
that.
did that happen for Mohammed's tenant would be good to understand. And was it something which has changed in the user locations, and like initially it was created in Asia, but like the rest of the users moved to Europe, or what exactly happened?
And the idea of changing the region is something we can do if there is a support ticket, but they cannot do.
So here's the thing. We cannot change the region of an environment once it's created.
Okay.
We can do a change of the default environment. So currently tagged for a certain environment, you might like to switch it, yes. Although we don't encourage it, because it can cause a little of other hassles. For example, users might feel that they've lost access, cause confusion, etc. And so that's, we really ask hard questions when you change it. But if you have a genuine reasons, feel free to raise support ticket, and we'll be happy with that.
Okay. Now, some of the questions are around P2, but I'm going to let you continue with what you're going to present, and then we'll come back to the P2 questions. So just be patient. I am watching your questions.
Yeah. So what we created over here is, we created an environment. We went to the details and the security, some aspect of it, and the resources. Now, I did touch on one of the topic, which was environment maker. An environment maker is a role where these users, when given the permissions, can access and create apps and flow in the organization. So anyone, and once they create it, they can grant access of edit permissions to the rest of the users. But the people who can create the fresh new applications or flows from scratch are these people. The only caveat to this is that in the default environment, every user is an app maker, has a maker permission and for app and flow. So yes, customers do ask us that, hey, I want to restrict this, etc. But the way the default environment is designed today is that we want to enable all the users in your organizations to create the apps and flows. Now, default environment it's not recommended to be used as a production environment. If you want to use an environment as a production environment, you go ahead and create a production environment separately and use it for that purpose. Default environment, yes, if you're creating new apps, etc., if they're created from the office scenarios, for example, SharePoint and all of them will land in the default environment. So we want to maintain it for that purpose, for sure. If there's some user who's creating the apps which are more of playing around with it, they don't have PowerApps Plan 2 trial, they don't know how to create the trial environment, of course, they can go ahead and create the apps in the default environment. If you're using the non-office apps, which are like for your other mission-critical applications, etc., then we recommend you to create a non-default environment, which is production. Go ahead and use it for that purpose.
I know that many people are just managing the discovery, right? And if everybody in the organization is creating apps, depending on how they're sharing them, it becomes hard to feature apps. Do you have recommendations for how companies can promote their apps, kind of like SharePoint does promoted links, but like promote your apps so that when they go to that default view, maybe where there might be, I don't know, 50 SharePoint apps or whatever else might be going on. How do I get my company's most important featured apps to the top, or how do I manage featuring my apps?
Right, this is definitely in our backlog to surface the featured apps on top in the admin center, but like we in the web.poweraapps.com, we often have functionalities where you can, some of the apps which have been shared with you, etc., gets listed down, etc.
Okay.
I know the based on the user requirement, we change the PowerApps Maker portal, etc., based on the requirements. But yes, it's something which is
okay.
And ability
to use Dynamics in the meantime and pen
yes. So the other one is the Dynamics homepage, where Dynamics 365 home, where people discover these apps which have been shared with them, more used, etc.
Okay.
Over there.
Okay.
Now, we do want to have a functionality which is in a backlog from Admin Center as well. You can mark some of the apps which are more featured for that environment. So when somebody goes to that environment from the Maker portal or any other place, web.poweraapps.com, then they can discover, hey, here are the featured apps for this.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's something which we won't do in our Admin Center as well. Perfect. But that's in our backlog.
That works. It's good to know it's in the backlog too. Okay, now I have a couple of questions here I want to start catching because we're getting a lot here. So I want to talk about, and I think we covered Neil, but let me just mention his comment here. Neil Barsley said, because we ran into a major problem, we rolled out apps which had connections to our SQL database. Then we realized that anyone could create an app and use that connector to view all the data in the database. So, Neil, your goal was, in that particular sense, I'm scrolling back up. Neil, can you clarify what you'd like to do? Is it, because I see your point about, understanding how to manage the connector, but I was wondering what specifically was your question on that point for Manas? So he had a problem that he rolled out apps, and then because he rolled it out to the environment, being that connection was available in that environment, people that he really didn't want to use it had used it. Would you suggest that they permission the connector, or how would you?
So the question is that people started developing the apps on top of it?
Yeah, they started to make apps and use the connector to view all the data in the database. And so, when I see that, I'm not 100% sure where.
So the question which I have is that you can only view the data in the database, ideally, where you as a user has access to.
Okay.
Right? So is that something which we need to fix at the SQL database layer itself, where who has what kind of data access?
Yes.
Because if somebody has access to certain data, they might create apps at any moment, whether it can be PowerApps or any other kind of application, which they might be starting with a .NET, MVC app, etc. But they can connect and create apps on their own as well, right? So if they have access to it, now the key thing is that does all the users have access to all the data, or so that's an important thing to watch out for, something which we should take offline with.
Yes, and it makes sense. I mean, I think. And I think he says his question's been answered, so he feels good about that answer. But primarily, that's a tip I give to everyone. When it comes to what people have access to, remember that is controlled at the source, at the data source.
Right.
PowerApps respects the permission model at the data source.
Absolutely, because if you are creating, say, imagine you're creating an app and you share it out. Say the other person whom you have shared this out with doesn't have access to that data source. We should not override that.
Gotcha.
So we should follow the same paradigm, as in like whatever data source access is, we just honor that.
Yeah. A couple of people did point out, as you pointed out earlier, that any customization in SharePoint list forms and SharePoint apps can only happen in the default environment. And yes, that is by design.
That's by design.
Okay. Just checking for any questions. I think we're good.
Great.
Keith, who is a very active user in our community. Good morning, Keith. He asked a question, any chance we will be able to create gateway in environments other than the default?
Perfect question, Keith. Thanks for asking this. Yes, one of our top asks, and you'll be glad to know that yes, it's in our backlog and with a high priority, and we started working on it. We can't give the exact date for it, but something which um, should be available in some time, something which is in high-end backlog.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Now, Neil did point out that he really wanted to restrict the default environment so no one can create apps, but that would basically block his SharePoint integrations, his Office
Exactly.
integrations,
It's the way it is
because
designed
they
today.
all are by default in default.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So default environment, it's you cannot remove any users from the maker permissions because of SharePoint and various other scenarios.
Yeah, Keith said thank you about having that awareness on his question, the gateway.
Yeah.
And Mohammed, I see in some cases they're talking to each other here, but Mohammed mentioned that if you have a role level security built in your SQL, it would be overridden when I create the connection and share the app. So let me repeat that. Mohammed, you might have to clarify this. If I have a role level security, an RLS, maybe I'm saying that wrong, built in my SQL database, it would be overridden when I create the connection and share the app.
Let's check this offline with
Yes,
Muhammad.
I'm not sure about
yes,
that one, Mohammed.
Something which we need few of the folks as well to be seeing at it.
Okay, no
And,
problem.
yeah.
We can follow up with
Yeah.
him later.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
Great.
You can
No,
continue.
absolutely fine. So it's good to see that the questions which you guys are asking is very much in our backlog and it really helps us prioritize that. So let's go to the production environment which we had, and now we're going to create a database. So I'm going to create a database, and when I start creating the database with the latest version of Common Data Service for Apps, now you're asked for the current CS. So let's use the current CS, USD, and probably language is English, and create my database. Now, creating the database might take some time for us to create the database. In the meantime, we can go to any other environment where the database has been already created. Say, let's take this environment. Now, the moment you create the database, you'll see a change in the screen and the way the details are listed down, the way the security is operated, all of that changes. Yes, it's just a transition because we've moved to the latest version of the Common Data Service for Apps. Audrie, is there any session which has been scheduled for what is the new version of Common Data Service for Apps, etc.?
Yes, we have several webinars. We actually put out a 3-part series.
Great.
Where we built a student onboarding app and stuff.
Awesome.
We talked about CDS for apps in the very first one, where Clay actually walked us through how to build an entity and fields. It was a great webinar. I'll point to it in the description.
Awesome. So the key thing over there is now with Common Data Service for Apps, we are kind of unifying the platform which is used for PowerApps database, which is CDS for apps, and the Dynamics 365. So now we are in that journey, and the first step is to make sure that you all can leverage a single data source for your business applications, right? The important business applications from Microsoft side is like Dynamics 365, and you build top of it like PowerApps on that data. So in order to do that, we've now started redirecting some of the functionalities to Dynamics 365. So if you see the details, you can now manage this environment, which has now a database being created. And if you see the name of this environment, it's first the environment name, which is ABC or whatever you want to write, and in bracket there's an org name. So the users who are familiar with Dynamics 365 knows that there is a concept of an org, which is nothing else but an database in Dynamics 365 language, or now is linked together. So this is the database which is now linked with this environment. So let's click on this and we'll go to the Dynamics 365 Admin Center, where we'll be able to manage the all the instances or environment or orgs, whatever the word which you prefer to say, or databases or environments, all are words used for the same stuff. You can manage it over here, etc., how you used to do it in Dynamics 365. So Here's the Dynamics 365. All the environments in the where they have the databases are being listed down over here. Okay. So this is Dynamics 365 Admin Center for the folks who are not aware of.
So is that admin center only available for those with a Dynamics 365 license?
The folks who have access. So this is available to anyone who has even a single environment which is being or org which is being created from either from PowerApps or Dynamics 365 by then. They have the admin privileges.
Perfect.
Right. Now, to maintain the security, now if you see there were environment admin and maker roles which were listed down. Now everything is now in Dynamics 365 experience. So you go to that, click on the link, you go over there. I'm not sure what the problem was, but what you can do over here, you can add the users which you don't find over there, and then go ahead and add those users in the instance, which is a little different from the PowerApps experiences or earlier versions where you didn't have to add a user to an environment, but now you have to add your user from your organization over here, and then go ahead and assign the security role to them. So then you can go to the richer, basically row level securities and various roles, custom roles, etc. Probably we might not have time to cover this today. We can have a separate session for that. And
yes, I think we should. Yes.
And then we can go ahead and create new roles as well, assign users to that, etc.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is all revamped the security there.
Yes. So security is completely managed by a single source, which is now Dynamics 365 platform.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that most of these stuff is now managed by single sources.
Okay.
So we are working on unifying these admin centers as well at some moment. This is high in our backlog.
Okay.
Work is in progress for that already. So something which folks should watch out that how the two unification happens. So like platform. So platform has happened now. The UI layer also gets unified for that.
Okay, this is great to look forward to. I think this is great. I have interior woodworking specialists back again. They come often to our webinars. Welcome back. Today they explained a little problem they have. So being that they can only have the gateway in the default, right? And they want to use CDS, right? Their CDS is the older version, and they want to leverage CDS for apps with all the new functionality.
Right.
And they need to stay in the default environment because the gateway is only possible there.
Yeah.
How do they get their CDS upgraded?
Great question. So the team has been working on it, and you'll be glad to know that some of the preview, which is a little bit private preview, so if you're under NDA, etc., you can reach out to us and ask for it. We'll start onboarding for the preview of it to only the NDA customers, limited folks soon. And then we'll be offering that upgrade functionality to everyone.
So when you say preview, what are we previewing? I'm sorry.
So basically an ability, so it's a very simple upgrade approach.
Okay.
Where you need to explicitly as an admin of the environment needs to take few actions to upgrade your environment to be working with 2.0 instead of a 1. So the new version of the CDS for apps instead of the old version of the common service.
Right.
You need to start operating on that. So, but it's a simple few clicks required and few actions required from environment admins and environment makers who have the apps which are connecting to CDS.
Okay.
We have a well-defined process for that, which will be rolling out soon.
Can they volunteer to be part of that?
If they're under NDA, they're more than invited for that.
Okay.
We'll be rolling it out soon for that. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Good. Thanks, Manas.
Right.
I'll keep interior networking on my radar as far as who might want to be part of that. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Now, on that, moving on to the next topic, because we've covered this for 40 minutes and we have some time left, and we want to make sure that we give time for the other questions as well. One of the big questions being asked and the nervousness about an IT admin, and it's so natural, right? Hey, folks in my company are connecting to any data sources, I'm really worried about that. How can you help me out?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that, yes, we do worry about that as well. And we want to make sure that your data is protected. How do we do that? So the data is protected by using the data loss prevention policies. What is a data loss prevention policy? A data loss prevention policy is, let's go ahead and create a new policy. And you can choose for now to create a specific environment or to all environments. If you get a tenant admin, you can apply to all. If you're an environment admin of specific environments only, then you can create to some of them, apply to some of those environments. Now, all the connectors which you have in the system right now, the default connectors, which are connecting to either to business data like SharePoint or Dynamics 365 or Salesforce, or you have connectors which are connecting to social media like Facebook or Twitter. We want to make sure that they both are not talking to each other. An app should not be talking to each other. So what you can do is move certain set of data sources to the business data only group. And there are two data groups which are being created. One is business data only and the other one is no business data. So you can let the Twitter and like Facebook and other social media stuff to be left in the no business data. And you can move the SharePoint and the OneDrive for Business and Dynamics 365 and Salesforce like applications connectors to the business data. So let's do that. So if you do this,
So by default, Manas, there is no rule. Like when you first make your environment, there's no data policy rule other than everything defaults to the bottom section.
yes, and the reason why we did that was because we are not sure what do you recognize as a business data versus non-business data. So we leave it to you to define that policy and give you complete ability to do that.
Gotcha. Right. Gotcha. Makes sense. Leave it in the business hands to decide.
Business hands to decide. But we highly recommend that if you're creating and if your company and organization is using this environments, and especially for production purposes, go ahead and define the policy for the environments for your business needs versus how you're storing the data in business.
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Thank you.
So what does it like? How does it get applied is a big question. So whenever you're creating an app which is now connecting to a business data group, and you try adding a connector to it or try using it for the non-business data connectors group, any of the connector, it will stop you. It will not let you proceed. And no users can use that app then if you have both of the connector being in the same place, in the same app. So what you need to do is make sure that they're well segregated. To app makers, we give enough blockers and recommendations around it. Do not proceed and why it is blocked. But there might be scenarios where before applying this policy, that somebody created it. Then also we warn the users that hey, this is not going to be available and people will not be able to use it. So something which we want to make sure that you as an environment admin or IT admin of the organization, go ahead and apply it. The policies for environment, and most importantly, a tenant admin or a global admin can define a policy and apply it to all the environments in one shot.
Okay.
That's the key of it. Okay. The other one is the user licenses. So we do get a question on who all are using PowerApps and Flow in my organization. Yes, there are users who are signing up for the trial plan. The users who you as an IT admin would have given valid licenses for PowerApps and Flow, which are paid or viral plans. How do you get to see of all those active users? What we provide you is a quick way to download the list of active users, which also have the plans associated with them, which is PowerApps and Flow. And you can just see who all are creating apps, flows, using it, and with what plan. So it's a simple CSV file, which you can download, view it in Excel, share out the report with your colleagues, share out the report with your global admin, And it's so easy to do that. And you can just munch on this data, create reports and nice graphs and see who's doing what.
Oh, that's awesome. So you can just download the file and then you can pivot it or where you want to make it,
Yes.
just make your own little
Right.
dashboard. Mhm.
So while I'm opening this CSV file in this Excel app, so okay. While it's opening up, if there are any other questions which we can answer.
So we got a question on SharePoint permissions, which is one.
Right.
So you're good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Now.
We just lost. Okay, it's back. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear us? I know we had a little blurb just now. If you're buffering, just refresh the screen. We did lose connection for about 10 seconds there, but it looks like we're back. Let me know if you hear me. You can keep going, Manas.
Right. So this is more about the overall admin center. We do want to continue adding more functionalities, and I'm happy to go to the backlog slide as well to talk about some of the top things which we are working on, and you'll be glad and surprised that. So using
so you can give us
on-premises,
a sneak peek into what's
what's coming next,
yay.
right?
Okay,
And I want to
thank
talk
you.
about some of the ask doesn't mean that they are in our backlog. And what is in our backlog, I would like to talk about that as well. So I'm just want to cover the overall top
This is exciting.
Few of them are already covered.
Yeah.
Using on-premises gateway in environments other than default environment, we have already covered this. This is, I just want to repeat that this is something which is really high up in our backlog, top ask, and we are working on it. Ability to update the app owner from admin center. Yes, this is something which is again top ask. You have the ability to do it from either from support ticket or from PowerShell on your own. We'll make sure that
yay is coming from the chat, so thank you.
Yes. And we want to provide this in the UI in the admin center. This is in backlog. I'm not sure if that will be prioritized very soon or will it come in the next few months. Only enable specific users as makers in default environment. This is not prioritized because this is by design. I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page for that. This is something which we will remain for some near good future as is. Ability to disable particular connector. Again, we don't have this, and I don't think we want to do this for now. It's as far as you can manage with your business data versus no business data.
Okay.
Most of the users and customers who had this ask were able to manage it with the no business data and business data.
Okay.
So this is, we have met the ask with that, and many of our customers are happy with that.
Perfect.
Government cloud support is something which is, again, many of you ask. That is something which we are planning to, we have started working on it. It might take some time for us to deliver because there are so many components which are needs to be in government cloud. But we do want to make sure that we are there in the CY 18, calendar year 18, somewhere Q4, end of the Q4.
This makes sense.
Yeah. And there's also, most importantly, which is not listed in the ask, because it has not come out very evident to the many of the customers, is the surfacing the functionalities in the common admin center in some way, both from the dynamic side and the PowerApps and Flow side. Yes, the work is in progress for that with a high priority as well. So that you don't have to go to the various portals, etc., to manage it. Yeah.
And Manas, I know we have about 10 minutes left, and we have some follow-up action with some of the users, as far as some of the attendees today, as far as what's possible for the environments and stuff. But I'd like to kind of pick your brain because you're the closest to this scenario. Can you share with everybody listening today, like your top 3 best practices for managing environments? What do you think are things they should really make sure they always do, or things they should please don't ever do because they just make messes?
Yeah. So what you should do, so you can be the tenant admin, which is Office 365 global admin, or just an environment admin of a scoped environments, right? Depending on the business requirement. As tenant admin, I would highly encourage you go ahead and set the data policies for your environment when you're using them.
Okay.
I would highly encourage that.
So data policies are priority.
Priority to be used. And the reason is that it's not that, your data loss will happen today itself. No, if somebody started using. It just gives you peace of mind, enables you to start making sure that the data is protected and doesn't leave it in the hands of the users in your organization. Right? That's one thing.
Yeah.
Second, you should start. So once you have done even in the default environment, you should start creating the production environments and specific environments for specific use, so that you can assign the environment makers in those environments. And if it's production, here are the set of users who should be developing apps for me.
Okay, so wait. So here we're talking about scoping our environments.
Yes.
So before we make an environment, kind of sit down with our decision makers in that org or that team and say, hey, what kind of apps are we going to be doing?
Absolutely.
Is there any common denominators amongst the makers and the users?
Right.
And then you create an environment with awareness of what your targets are.
Yes.
And where they are too.
Where they are, which
regionally.
organization they are,
Okay.
depending on what need do you have.
Okay.
So some of the examples which we should definitely talk about, what like some of the Microsoft teams have done or some of the other customers like to do is, hey, there's a finance department. Can I create a separate environment for them? There's a HR department. They want to develop
stop
apps.
sharing if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
They want to create separate environment to manage their apps, and there's specific users in their environment who create apps for specific need.
Okay.
Now, that gives an ability for not everyone in the world to be creating the apps in that environment, which kind of makes things easy and gives more comfort and peace that here are the set of users who can develop the apps and can share it. They can share it with anyone in the organization. Nothing stops them based on the business requirement, but it's still a scoped down version of who all can create the apps.
Gotcha. Now on that point, I have a question from Interior Woodworking, and I'll put us both on camera because we're not really using the screen right now.
Right.
At this time, he said, at this time, you are allowed 2 production environments. So his question is, how would you go about purchasing the ability to add more than 2 production environments?
Yeah. So the way to do that is basically you go ahead and every paid user has an ability today to create 2 production licenses.
Yeah.
So when I say paid user, it is a PowerApps plan 2 to be precise.
Okay.
Or PowerApps plans, right? It's not the say office plans, etc. No, they don't get the ability to do that. So
Plan 2 is separate, and
Plan 2
every
is separate.
user that has Plan 2
Yeah.
can create 2 environments.
2 production environments.
2 productions. Every user.
Every user can create 2 production environments.
Okay.
Right. So that is how it is aggregated at the top, like tenant level, etc., and gets
So
calculated.
if I'm in a team of 10 people, we can actually do 20 production environments.
Absolutely, and use it.
Ah.
So and then you can change the admins and of it, etc. You can correlate all that stuff. Will not stop you. You'll see the overall quota at the tenant level and say, hey, this is fine. You have the valid licenses for it, valid quota for it. Go ahead and continue using those environments.
Does that make sense, Interior Woodworking? That makes sense to me.
Right.
I mean, because
So
you just kind of have a plan as a group, like you plan.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's used for an organization purpose because no one is an individual on that. And then, of course, that individual can go ahead and make more modification, add more users to as an admins, etc.
Gotcha.
But when you're assigning a user a license of a PowerApps plan to, you would have thought something about it, right? It's not something which is just coming from, hey, the user just
Don't just make an environment for fun, right?
No.
Yeah.
So if it's a production environment, it's an environment which is you are paying for, and like in kind of it's being used for business critical apps, which your company has.
Yes.
And you would have thought about who all have PowerApps plan 2 because you must be giving that
Gotcha.
X dollar license to them.
I love it.
With you making an action in the UI of Office 365 admin center saying this guy has this license now.
Gotcha. So number one, DLP priority. Number two, don't just make environments. Kind of sit down and think about what's the region it should be, what's the target user base, what's the kind of people that would be making apps, what data sources will we need, and then make your production environments, right? Yes. And we found out that we can make 2 per user, which means that as a team of 5 people, we got 10 environments there at the max.
Right.
Okay. Now, third, what else should we?
Do not leave the apps which are in the trial. So you might start with the trial. Hey, this is trial. Fine, let me get started. Great. Of course, we encourage that you guys go ahead and start thinking about trial so that you can start learning about it.
Yep.
No problem. We totally encourage for that. But the moment you realize that it's something which you want to do for production purposes, SAP, just make sure that you have a production app. So we still coming up with the story of how to convert a trial into production, but we'll make sure your data is not lost.
And we can package our apps, right, that are in trial, package them, export them, and bring them back into production. Okay.
All that functionality is available today of exporting an app and importing it. There's a first-class way. I know it is in preview. Some of the users might not have access to it, etc.
Okay.
But what you can always do is download an app locally, and like many of the users download the file of the app and just upload it in the new environment as well.
So, guys, I would suggest, people who are attending to this session, think about these 3 takeaways. Ask yourself, how are we doing with our data loss prevention? Secondly, are we planning our environments? Maybe that would kick up your adoption and governance several notches. And then thirdly, as you learn about these features, don't hang out in trial forever. Give a try to some of our packaging. See if your app exports well from trial. Kind of try that out early before you go too far down the path, of making a production app in trial. Export it, try and work with it. Feel free to reach out to us via the community. We love talking to you, even one-on-one, not just these webinars. So if you post on the community, we have a community forum specifically for CDS, for Common Data Service or apps that you can post for questions related to the new version of CDS. And if you have other questions, all the other forums are there, or worst case scenario, you can private message me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But let's try and stay close on these topics. I know we covered as much as we could this morning.
Yeah.
We had an hour. We'll be glad to do this again. We also plan to have an Ask Microsoft Anything on the community, which is specifically targeted to administration and governance. So we'll have Manas be part of that as well. And you will see some videos that will be posting in the community on this topic, as well as, I hope you know, but maybe I can just quickly share this on the last thing I can share on the screen today. I'm just going to go and kind of show you real quick the PowerApps community here. If you go into the community and you click on documentation, so from the Learn menu, click on documentation, you'll notice that the 3rd grouping on this page is Administer PowerApps. And this is something I know a couple of people have missed, even myself, I didn't know about it. After we migrated, we created this little subset. If you click on that, you get all this really neat information that goes over some of the things that Manas talked about to us today, and some more stuff, even the PowerShell support, which is down here on the bottom. So check out this page. I will also have it linked in the description so that you can actually be able to follow up on some of these ideas on your own. I'm going to stop sharing, or I'll leave it there. And we're going to have to close down. Any remaining questions, I will get back to you later and make sure that I answer you. Don't hesitate to private message me on the community. My alias there is AUDRIE MSFT, Microsoft Fulltime. Be careful not to previews, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week.